Time to dig into the newspapers. Thank you for staying. We'll be joined shortly by Selom Brantia, a policy analyst with Imani Africa. But let's get into the Daily Graphic newspaper very quickly. Seal revenue leakages at Tema Port. Oforiatta charges the GRA. And of course, revenue becoming a very important issue, crucial in fact, on the back of our economic, downturn. And that story is on page 43. The Minister of Finance, Ken Oforiatta, has called on the Ghana Revenue Authority to adopt new strategies to address tax leakages at the Tema Port. Doing that, he explained, would help the government to raise the needed revenue for national development. Speaking during a tour of some terminals at the Tema Port yesterday, the minister expressed worry that the loss of revenue at the ports, particularly through tax evasion, was being aided by some members of the trading public and alleged connivance with some port officials. So mention must be made of the fact that while the finance minister is saying this, we must also play our part. If people are avoiding, or better still, evading taxes, then it leaves a lot to be desired. While it is worth, and I'm quoting him here, while it is worth commending the GRA for the efforts they are putting in to ensure the needed revenues are raised from the country's ports, a lot more ought to be done to block any loopholes through which state funds are lost. So, to be fair, even as we call for more, better roads, better hospitals, and all of that, we must also be willing to pay our taxes. I guess the concern of most people has been where those or how those taxes are utilized more often than not. Kumasi International Airport ready in August. That's also on page 16 of the paper. Open Galamsey pits swallow community members. That story is on page 16. Let me take a quick look at it. This Galamsey bit. So scores of uncovered pits left behind by illegal miners are posing a serious threat to residents of those mining communities. Now, while many people have fallen into those pits, leading to their untimely deaths, others are living dangerously as the abandoned pits serve as death traps looking for prey. Additionally, the uncovered pits have become breeding grounds for mosquitoes and reptiles. And that's the sad story there. At Wamase in Akrofom, in the Akrofom district, for instance, scores of abandoned pits were dotted around. A similar situation was observed at Manson Kwanta, Manso Edubia, and Jacobu in the Amansie West, Amansie South, and Amansie Central districts, respectively. All right, so that is it for that story. We have Selom Brantia joining the conversation now. Mr. Brantia, a very good morning to you. Thank you for joining us this Thursday morning.
Good morning. How are you doing?
I'm okay. We're getting by. God is our help. I hope you're well too, Selom.
Yeah.
Okay. So before I even take you into the Daily Graphic newspaper, let me just do this. I noted, and I'm being a bit mischievous here, but I noted a post you put up on social media, and I felt it was so reflective of so many things. In the post, and I'm just trying to get the screenshot, you speak of life back then. I think you mentioned 2009 and how things have been difficult, and for young people, how it can be difficult even in these times. And you also talk about coming out of that. Would you like to share maybe a bit of that with us, if you don't mind? I'm just looking for the snapshot I took of it. But you recall the post I speak of, right?
Yeah, I was actually very surprised it went so viral because it's one of those spur of the moment things that I write. I did that because I realized that in recent days, a lot of young people who have just graduated from university, etc., have been very, very, a lot of them tend to be so despaired and depressed, I mean, without hope.
Disenchanted with everything, basically. Because...
Hello?
I'm saying disenchanted with everything, basically, because like you mentioned, and, you go to school, try to get an education
with the
and
situation
everything.
with school and all of that, and people finishing service and not knowing what to do next.
Right.
So I just thought that it was something that I could share. Some of us, I graduated school very early. I did sixth form. I didn't even do the SHS system, and I finished my sixth form at the age of 15.
Wow.
I had my first job at 16. I was doing national service at 16. I had my first job at 17 before I went to the university. And I finished my master's at 25. Back then, that was really like, it was kind of like the whole...
It was a big deal.
But things, I planned to go the independent route without working for anybody. And I had 5 years of ups and downs. And by the time I was 30, I didn't know what I was doing with my life, you know. And of course, Imani had started around that time, and I was doing Imani, but I've never been full-time with Imani. It was always something that I was doing mostly because of my activist mind.
Right.
And professionally, I didn't see any way forward. So I was just sharing that experience to say that the dreams that you have when you are, let's say, 20 or 21, not always work out. But then if you take that time or that your 20s, the period in your 20s to build extra skills.
Right.
Skills that require, let's say, craftsmanship or handiwork or being able to do something professional.
Right.
It becomes a second option when everything else fails. What most young people are swayed by is the riches they see their friends on social media, or people seeing just made it at once. In real life, it really doesn't happen that way. There's nothing like overnight success. Everything takes time and diligence.
It takes time.
If we are ready to be humble and start right from the beginning, we can build up things for ourselves, such that we would not have to always depend on the government or depend on the benevolence of others. Because the last line of my post said, the right in your hands, what you can do to be successful, or what you can do to make it is right in your hands. And there is a gap in terms of skills, in terms of artisanal skills in the country, and there's a housing boom. So many houses are being built by private and public sector, etc. You can always find a niche somewhere in there and do something that will supplement your income and reduce
and your piece,
as well as value.
In your piece, you talk about, look, whatever must be done, and let me just start from this end. I really felt that bit when you were writing, because in there was also talk about seeing your friend, and that day you were all sweaty with your file or whatever, walking in town. Was it around Zongo Junction? And then you see this person in a posh car, and you are using your leg Benz, and you have to hide. That was so real, because it happens to so many of us.
I was wearing that day. I was wearing a brown T-shirt and khaki trousers and slippers, and the sun was hot and the road was dusty.
Right.
This guy is coming with this blue, fresh Honda Civic, and he had the AC on, this hot sun, and my armpits were sweaty, and I felt so embarrassed. That day I asked myself, what am I really doing? I mean, first graduate, 5 years down the line, and my friends are, good jobs, and I just couldn't even stand by the road and watch him, and he would have seen me, and he would have waved at me, and I didn't know how I would have reacted. So I dodged. That's the truth.
And you speak of something interesting. It's obvious that we've not been able to absorb the youth. I just want to end on this point. We've not been able to absorb the youth in terms of providing jobs for them. You said something crucial in that piece, that we shouldn't be, afraid of taking on the plumbing, the masonry, and other things. I know people who don't have white-collar jobs, but they're doing carpentry. Trust me, they earn a lot more than I do. So it was a very important point you made there as well, that young people should be willing to get their hands dirty in order to make a living when need be.
Absolutely. We look down on people like that because of the traditional mindset that we have, the mindset from the throwback from the colonial era. Those people are useless people and all of that. But the truth of the matter is that there's because people look down on such fields, there is so much opportunity there. There are so many gaps there. Right. And if Ghana, we can talk all the policy stuff. If Ghana wants to be an industrialized nation, then we need a huge level of skill set in those areas for us to industrialize. It's not always that we need to always have to fly in technicians from China or from the US or from Europe to fix machinery when we can build that capacity locally. And this is something that we don't even need to invest huge amounts of money in. Just need to invest willing people and willing hands.
Let me take you into the Daily Graphic newspaper this morning. Cement turf war. Regulators distance themselves from Empire Cement. Firm says it's cooperating for permit, and local cement manufacturers have expressed serious concern about a new entrant, Empire Cement Ghana Limited, located at Weija in Accra, which they allege is producing and distributing cement without authorization. They have accused the company of operating under unethical environmental conditions, but Empire Cement has denounced and discredited the accusations, saying it has not started producing cement at the factory for the open market. It said it had a permit to produce cement papers and was still working with the Environmental Protection Agency. Nothing surprises me anymore in this country, Selom. I don't know about you, but what would be your quick take on this development, Empire Cement and the turf war?
So there are two things here. I think that for a long time, the cement industry was monopolized by one player with the aid of government, which was not the best. I think that now that the space is wide open, we need to have a far more decentralized approach to building material companies and cement companies. If it is just a matter of grading cement and having an institution that checks out the grading, whether it is Ghana Standards Board or Ghana Standards Authority or some other regulator, it is just a matter of us saying, just the same way people import milk powder or produce milk or whatever it is, we should just be very clear and say that, look, this is the kinds of grades of cement that we should produce in this country. These are the kinds of parameters we are looking for. These are the kinds of working environments we need to see for the production of cement in the country. We should not stretch it to the point where we make it look like it's only a selected part that has the right to produce cement in this country. We are at a stage in the country where so many of us are not housed, and there's a huge housing deficit. And the government and the authorities have to put everything together to ensure that there is equitable access to a lot of these components that will require us to be able to fulfill those housing gaps. And one of these means decentralizing this whole approach to cement production and rather making it more of a municipal thing where we look basically at the environmental impact of the cement producing places and then just grading the cement according to quality and recommending what kind of use case scenarios are to it. I think this thing where we always want to oppose every cement company coming in is also reducing creativity, because there are a lot of people who have researched into other types of cement that can even be produced locally that have not been encouraged just because of the kind of regulatory environment that we've had.
Let's look at some other stories. And Supreme Court ruling poses challenges to parliamentary business. That's according to the Speaker of Parliament. Story on page 17 of the Daily Graphic newspaper. There's also open Galamsey pits swallow community members, and that's on page 16 of the paper. Some residents in these areas are living dangerously as Selom. Many have fallen into these pits, leading to their untimely deaths. Others are living dangerously as the abandoned pits serve as death traps looking for prey. The uncovered pits have also become breeding grounds for mosquitoes and reptiles. And guess which areas? I mean, so many of them, but just to cite a few. Wamase in the Akrofom, Wamase and Akrofom in the Akrofom district. There's also Manson Kwanta, Manso Edubia, and Jacobo in the Amansie West, Amansie South, and Amansie Central districts, respectively. There are so many of them, but Galamsey was supposed to be a good thing. Gather and sell, basically. Something small for the boys to also get something going and make a living. But it has turned into something very ugly, hasn't it?
Yeah, I mean, this artisanal mining thing didn't start now. We have to ask ourselves a very critical question. Why is it that there was small-scale mining in all the hundreds of years that gold was discovered in Ghana? Gold was being exported in Ghana from 1485 or whenever till the last century. And then suddenly it's taken just the last 10 or 15 years for this to become a huge burden on the environment. It is because of the fact that technology, earth-moving technology has become relatively cheaper to access, and the technology has improved very aggressively. And it has improved beyond the ambit or the ability of the law to catch up, or the ability of policymakers to catch up with it. The issue here is basically, you can just boil it down to corruption and collusion by those who are supposed to help fix the problem. If we could still have managed this if we had a clear policy on land reclamation, a clear policy on land use. We don't do that, and then we have allowed a lot of these Galamsey people to monetize and weaponize themselves, abuse people who live in farmland, making them. I've seen countless videos where people are going to the farm in the morning and they are harassed with people with guns because chiefs have ceded even lands belonging to families or people's farmland, because they say that the farming is not, the farming is not giving them enough money or income, and therefore they sell the land to Galamsey, sometimes without the approval of other family members. And this is what happens when you have such a huge shift in land use without any kind of clear measures to address some of the issues that come along with it. It is very destructive, and therefore there should have been a plan which would involve the chiefs and people of these localities, where they work towards reclaiming the land or find some way to incentivize land reclamation. A lot of this Galamsey is also speculative, because you might think that because you found gold at Kokomlemle, you would find gold at Nima, but it probably would not be the case, because the land structure is different. But then in prospecting or in speculating, you take all that land mass and then you destroy it. And usually that destruction takes about 20, 30, 40 years to fix, especially when there is no work being done to help reclaim the land from these activities. I think that it is high time we should look at it beyond season of excavators. We have to look at the role of the military very carefully, and the fact that in some of these interactions, the military actually has been reported to be colluding with some players in the industry to cause this mess. It requires a huge national dialogue if we are going to go forward.
Right. Let's look at some other stories. The Daily Graphic to wrap finally. 2 million Ghana City resettlement project takes off in Ketu South this month, of course, on the back of recent storm surges or tidal waves that we have seen ravaging the area again. But I want to tie two stories together from the Ghanaian Times and the Daily Guide. I'm going to tie them together because they are linked and because they also feed into what we're going to be hearing from the Vice President, Dr. Mahamudu Bawumia, today on the state of our economy. The SONA has been delivered. People said it wasn't reflective enough of what we are truly facing in terms of the economy. The Ghanaian Times newspaper has as its banner headline, "Let loss-making entities go." And it is none other than Kwame Pianim. And we know of his pedigree. This is what he is saying. Put that side by side with what the Daily Guide newspaper says. Bawumia speaks on economy today. I will ask you, Selom, what are your expectations ahead of the Vice President's delivery? Are you expecting anything different from what Mr. President told us in the SONA? What basically are you looking forward to?
To be honest, a lot of the narrative related to the economy from the government has typically been about blaming every negative outlook on the COVID and the fact that we have not been able to raise much revenue because of pressures of the Ukraine war and post-COVID activity. I do not expect anything different beyond the same rehashing. We are at a point where we really need to know what the government or the economic team is doing to help rebound the economy. But a lot of the focus has been on government spending, and not enough focus on private capital generation or how to bolster the private sector, for instance, or how to encourage the banks to give more loans to the private sector and things like that, which could actually be the positive shot in the arm for the economy. But it's not been like that. The string of government these days is basically on revenue generation and revenue consolidation and little much else. And it is because we have created a top-heavy government policy, and it's unprecedented that we have government spending on everything from feeding children all the way to creating jobs. And that is a recipe for disaster.
Right.
And if it's more of that we are going to hear, then it really is not going to change anything or boost any kind of confidence in the economy. And these macro pointers that they keep pointing to do not reflect the reality on the ground, in people's pockets and the prospects for people's private businesses thriving, because these macro pointers do not encourage people to really put much effort into anything, because it just gets depressing.
It's interesting because Kwame Pianim also talks about a cost-benefit analysis from the state's point of view. And he says, just to be politically correct here, he says that most of the state-owned enterprises are not functioning. They should be let go of or privatized. The only ones that should be retained are the Ghana Water Company Limited, Electricity Company of Ghana, and the harbors, which he wants to be managed by the state. And you can get clearly what he means here. These are crucial to our national life. Beyond that,
I agree
the others can go.
I agree completely. We are at a point where state-owned enterprises are now just, reward mechanisms for party people.
Right.
Let's be very, very candid here. You have CEOs being appointed to state agencies who have never had any kind of administrative leadership, even in a community, call center. And these people are being given state organizations with huge mandates and a huge complement of staff. And this staff, the staffing is bloated, usually with staff members who have no, obligation or responsibility towards the objectives of those state enterprises, but are only part people who are put there. And 90% of them spend all their time on social media trying to either praise their party work or denigrate others who they see as being critics of the government. And that is all they've been doing all day. And it's no wonder a lot of these state-owned enterprises are incurring huge losses, as well as even fraud and leakage. And a lot of these have been buried and are usually rebuilt only 3, 4, 5 years after, just so that we put these individuals who then turn around and use their positions in these state-owned enterprises on their CVs as an excuse to enter mainstream politics. It has become a kind of a form that we really need to purge as a nation. So I am in a full agreement. Let's sell all those state-owned enterprises and de-emphasize that top-heavy government approach to solving every problem in this country by just spending money.
Right. Just to wrap the conversation, Selim, Attorney General adjudged Best Minister for 2021. Pictured there, Mr. Godfred Yeboah Dame. And congratulations to him on that feat. When you go to the international spread, page 6, Putin's daughters targeted by Western sanctions. And we're talking about the latest raft of sanctions that have been hitting the Putin, not just his country, but his own inner circle, his family as well. The Daily Guide newspaper now, NDC flag bearer race gets hot. It's all about Dr. Kwabena Dufour. There's also life jail for Blaise Compaoré. He actually is not in the country. He's in exile in the Ivory Coast. And finally, the Daily Statesman, let's end the acrimony, Majority Leader urges Parliament. But Selim, very quickly, in about some 30 seconds, how do you feel about the Majority Leader saying that he is aggrieved because former President Mahama has not supposedly attended some state functions at which the President, Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo, is the keynote speaker? Very briefly, what's your take?
I think that it's the making of both parties. They have never tried to unify the nation on their own prerogative or initiative over over the course of the last 3 years or so. I believe that there is a part to play in terms of being political adversaries, but also having a cause that unites us. Unfortunately, we have, especially from the point of view of Parliament, we have created enough acrimony through so many underhand tactics that there is, in fact, I also heard in another interview, both the majority and minority leader bemoaning the fact that there needs to be a truce somewhere. They have created this place for themselves because of a lot of partisanship instead of a sense of nationalism. So once we have partisanship seeping through the fabric of society as we have today,
right,
and exhibiting it in extreme form, where even we are ready to jettison government, things that really would push this nation forward just to suit party, party wishes.
Right.
We are not going to have a situation where you have this unity because, of course, then everybody wants to just stick to their guns. So it's up to the parliament to develop a posture that indicates to the rest of the Ghanaians who voted them in there that they are really acting in the interest of Ghanaians and not in the interest of their party. But so far, they have demonstrated otherwise, and there is very little trust in parliament. In fact, most people on the street do not trust their parliamentarians to do the right thing. They only trust them to do what their party dictates them to do.
Salom, you couldn't have said it any better. But thank you so much, Salom, for joining us once more on the news review. I do have a good day, sir.
You too. Have a great day.
I noticed this very quickly while I was delivering the news. Charles Ajay Parkus, you say happy birthday to myself. Well, Charles Ajay Parkus, happy birthday to you. Thank you for watching Joy News and the AM show specifically. But before we go, to our friends at Total Petroleum, we love you. You know that. On Monday, there was an incident where in the course of the news review, my guest who was joining me via Zoom said some things that we cannot independently verify here at the Multimedia Group. It has to do with a claim that whenever oil prices inch up, Total Petroleum is the first to increase their prices in Ghana. We cannot, like I said, independently verify that. We all know that these OMCs, first of all, must stay in business, and whenever prices go up, all of them increase their prices. So it was unfair for that statement to have been made, and I take the blame for not having corrected my guest on Zoom. So to our friends at Total Petroleum, this is an apology, unqualified apology, and we do hope that, of course, you would just let this pass, as you know that it had no malice behind it. In fact, I've had an interaction with the person who spoke on the show. No malice was behind it, and we render an unqualified apology. On that note, we gear in to sports, which is up next right here on the AM show. Do stay.